Hi everyone, thank you. Good afternoon. As Ben said, I'm Adam Hills and I'm the chair of the Essex branch. This is our first ever webinar, so we hope it's one that you enjoy. Just a couple of small bits of admin before we do commence with Abi's presentation. With COVID, we're going to move to an online delivery for the foreseeable future. So do please follow us on social media to stay up to date. Our Twitter address is @IOSH_Essex, and also do follow us on LinkedIn. So we'll be posting updates on that. The next branch meeting we were due to have was our joint one with the East Anglia branch. There are two potential dates that we're just firming those dates up, so please pencil in the 16th and the 30th of October for that joint meeting with East Anglia. Mentoring wise, we're really keen to still develop everyone and make sure everyone's staying on top of their CPD. So if you do need any help and support, then get in touch with our mentors. Details are on the Essex branch website, and the email address is essexmentors@ioshNetworks.com. Anything else, you can contact the branch directly. And as Ben said, this webinar will be available both via IOSH and also via our branch's YouTube page. So Abi is going to be taking over from me now. She's a senior environmental officer with the Environment Agency. And yeah, I'm going to hand across to Abi. So thank you and enjoy, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben and Adam. Welcome to everybody who has joined us. I hope you're all doing okay and coping with these unusual times we find ourselves in. My name is Abi Rake. I'm a Senior Environment Officer in the Kelvin and Waste team of the Environment Agency. I've worked in the waste field for about 5 years now, and I've got experience regulating a range of waste and installation activities, investigating illegal activities, and responding to environmental incidents. This session is an introduction to waste. It's specifically aimed at companies who produce waste as part of their business activities, to give an overview of their legal responsibilities in dealing with that waste and ensuring it is recovered, recycled, reused, or disposed of appropriately. The format of this webinar will be that I will run through the presentation, which will take around 40 to 45 minutes, and then we will open up for questions. I hope you find it. Okay, so we're going to start with the waste hierarchy, which is set out in Article 4 of the revised Waste Framework Directive. The waste hierarchy ranks waste management options according to what is best for the environment. It gives top priority to preventing waste in the first place, so minimising the use of materials and design, don't buy what you won't use, etc. And then when waste is created, it gives priority to preparing it for reuse, then recycling, then recovery, and last of all, disposal. The diagram on the screen demonstrates this in a funnel shape. And this is really identifying that we should be trying to deal with as much waste as we can as higher up in the funnel as possible, meaning that the least amount of waste we can enters the lower stages. As you can see, the diagram also gives examples of the activities that fit into each stage. So for prevention, you could use less material in design and manufacture. Preparing for reuse, checking, cleaning, repairing, refurbishing whole items or spare parts. Recycling, could you turn waste into a new subject or substance or product? And other recovery, this includes things such as anaerobic digestion, incineration with energy recovery, gasification, etc. And then finally disposal, which more often is landfill or incineration without any energy recovery associated. The application of this hierarchy today that we're going to be talking about is based on is for non-hazardous waste. There is a separate hierarchy or a separate guidance document for hierarchy for hazardous waste, and this is called Guidance on Applying the Waste Hierarchy for Hazardous Waste, and is available on the UK website. So please feel free to check that out as well. So what does your business have to do by law to comply with the waste hierarchy? Firstly, you need to answer this question on screen. Does your business or public body produce or handle waste? And this includes importing, producing, carrying, keeping, treating, or disposing of waste. Also includes dealers and brokers who have control of waste, and anyone responsible for the transfer of waste. If the answer is yes, then you need to take all such measures as are reasonable in the circumstances to apply the waste hierarchy to prevent waste, and then 2, in the event that you do create waste, to apply the hierarchy as a priority order when you transfer your waste to another person. So those are your key legal requirements. You will also need to add a declaration on your duty of care waste transfer note and hazardous waste consignment note confirming that you complied with this duty. For example, the wording on the screen could be used. We'll cover a bit more about waste transfer consignment notes later on in the presentation. table on this slide illustrates how the hierarchy applies for a range of common materials and products. For example, for glass, ideally prevention is the best option. If you need to use that much material, it's an unnecessary packaging. Then the next best option is to prepare for reuse. This relates to checking, cleaning, or repairing activities which allow a waste substance, product, or material to be reused without any other pre-processing. So in the case of glass, can glass bottles be washed and reused? The next best option is to recycle, for example, melting the glass down and using for another purpose. This is quite common for glass, and there's a really established industry for it. Then we move on to other recycling options, and this is all about research really, and talking to companies that can provide this service. For example, the NetReg's Waste Directory is a really good place to start. It's a search engine that offers businesses to find out where they can recycle different types of waste. It can be accessed via www.wastedirectory.org.uk. We also recommend asking your contractor how you can get the most value from the waste. So, is there a particular sorting pattern that fits their process to minimise end products that need to be disposed of? Definitely worth the question, and it can help both yourself and them, so it's really worth kind of pursuing. After this, you're in the other recovery category, where it's best to ask the question, is there anything else that could be extracted from my waste, so energy or product? In the case of glass, energy recovery is an option. Energy recovery from waste is the process of converting waste materials into usable heat, electricity or fuel. There are a number of different processes, e.g. combustion, gasification, pyrolyzation, anaerobic digestion, and each have different environmental implications. Therefore, the waste type really dictates the most appropriate energy recovery process for that waste. And finally, we get to landfill, or disposal, which in most cases is landfill or incineration without energy recovery. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a taste of how the process works. And this table is available in the guidance document I'm going to talk about shortly for you to have a look at and get more information. Now, the list on screen is not exhaustive, and if your business produces or handles waste materials not listed above, you will still need to apply the hierarchy to these wastes. Guidance on specific waste types is available from a range of sources, and there's also a range of schemes running to assist in this. And this is really where the power of the internet is clear in making these accessible for you. For example, if you deal with paint, if you go to communityrepaint.org, it can direct you to a community repaint network which aims to collect leftover paint, which is actually around 50 million litres in the UK each year, and then redistribute it to benefit individuals, families, communities and charities in need at an affordable cost. Alternatively, the Waste and Resources Action Programme operated a programme of work supporting the construction industry in reducing waste and improving resource efficiency. There's lots more details about that on the Syria.org website. New research is published all the time, and new technologies are also being constantly invented. These options are changing constantly, and it's definitely worth kind of keeping an eye out and seeing what's available out there. This table is a couple of years out of date now, so definitely keep an eye out and see what's available to you. So what does this actually mean for you? What is actually is kind of expected of you in terms of organising management of your waste? The best way of complying with the waste hierarchy is to apply good environmental practice. This can also save you a lot of money, as disposal of waste is getting more and more expensive. The key things to do are plan how you will apply the waste hierarchy. So this is know your business processes inside out. What are you going to be producing? How much? What waste management options are there for these wastes? Ensure you monitor your performance regularly. Know if your waste production is fluctuating and figure out why. Know what waste you're producing and make efforts to produce less. And sort and segregate the waste you do produce to help you or others recover value from it. I think this is probably one of the key bits. If you don't take anything else away from today, remember this. The way you segregate your waste at source has an impact on the variety and ranking of available waste management options going forward. So it's really essential that you put that time and effort into this and thought this through. However, you will also need to balance these with other considerations, such as which options are technically feasible, which are economically viable, and which best protect natural resources or human health. These will differ between businesses, and whether and how they are relevant will depend, for example, on geographical location and associated travel costs. If you're looking to send your waste to a site 350 miles away, you'll need to consider A, the cost, and also the potential impact on the environment as well. The type of business, the specific waste being produced, and the size of your business are all also really important factors. And this is what is meant by all such reasonable measures. and it will differ from business to business. What you're being asked to do is balance the various factors, make the best decision for your business circumstances and the waste you are producing. The key point to take note of is if you are making decisions on waste management which do not comply with the waste hierarchy because of these other factors, you must be able to justify them. It's good practice to keep record of your decisions. For more information on how to apply the waste hierarchy, please see section 4 of the guidance on applying the waste hierarchy. This has been produced by DEFRA and is available on the gov.uk website, as you can see on the right of the screen. As well as covering what I've already covered today, and including the table we talked about, this guidance is separated into useful questions to ask of both producers and handlers of waste. It is there to assist you through the process of applying waste hierarchy. For example, section 4.2 asks more about whether you could prevent more of your waste generation. Could your surplus materials be somebody else's resource? Are you using the right amount of packaging for shipping? And could you design products to last longer or be repaired more easily? 4.3 covers the ways to make your waste suitable for use in a better environmental option. And section 4.4 provides information on other key sources of support, such as toolkits, software, which allows businesses and public bodies to calculate the environmental impacts of their system, including waste management impacts. Although not all of the links work in these sections, this is just due to changing web links, etc. If you Google the key phrases or websites, you should be able to find the local resources. Which leads us into our next section, which is the Waste Duty of Care Code of Practice, and what this means for you. Duty of care is a law which says that all reasonable steps must be taken to keep waste safe, make sure it's dealt with responsibly, and only given to businesses authorised to take it to enable its safe recovery or disposal without harming the environment. It's issued under section 34(1), the Environmental Protection Act 1990. Duty of care applies to everyone involved in the waste chain, and that's producers, importers, carriers, brokers, dealers, etc. The Duty of Care Code of Practice sets out practical guidance on how to meet your waste duty of care. It's available on the gov.uk website, and it's as shown on the screen in both HTML and PDF format. If you operate across borders, you need to follow Scotland and Northern Ireland's codes of practice alongside this one because they are separate, similar but separate. The occupiers of domestic properties disposing of household waste from the property have a separate duty of care for the disposal of that waste. So that's just to be really clear that it differs between commercial waste and then waste from a householder. Guidance is included at the end of the code in section 5 on how to meet that separate duty of care. The duty of care requirements apply to household, industrial and commercial waste, which is also known as controlled waste. Now, waste is any substance or object that the holder discards, intends to discard, or is required to discard. Whether a substance or object is waste is determined on a case-by-case basis. If you're unsure, there's legal definition of waste guidance or the Is It Waste tool on gov.uk to assist you. It's worth bearing in mind there are some wastes that are exempt from the code, but they are not classified as controlled waste. They are quite unique, and it's probably not likely that many people will be coming into loads of contact with these, but I'll just kind of give you a flavour of what they are. So this includes waste waters, decommissioned explosives, radioactive waste, because these are listed in 2 Waste Framework Directive. Waste containing animal byproducts, where it is collected and transported in line with the animal byproducts regulation. And then sewage, sludge or septic tank sludge, where it is supplied, managed or used in ways described in Regulation 3 Waste Regulations 2012. This code also does not cover the extractive waste duty of care. That's mining, mineral resources, working quarries, etc. How long does your duty of care last? Well, you have a responsibility to take all reasonable steps to ensure that when you transfer waste to another waste holder, that the waste is managed correctly throughout its complete journey to disposal or recovery. So complete journey is the key phrase. You can do this by checking the next waste holder is authorised to take the waste, asking the next waste holder where they're going to take the waste, and checking that the intended destination is authorised to accept that waste, and carrying out more detailed checks if you suspect the waste is not being handled in line with the duty. So, for example, requesting evidence that your waste has arrived at the intended destination and that it has been accurately described. We're going to cover these in more detail shortly. Likewise, if you receive waste, you should cooperate with the previous waste holders in any measures they are taking to comply with their duty of care. This includes supplying evidence that previous holders may need to ascertain where their waste is, or that their waste has reached its end of waste location. Each holder in the waste chain shares the duty of care obligations. For example, if you use a waste dealer or a broker, you each have a responsibility to comply with your duty of care obligations. A common misconception is that the waste broker dealer takes that responsibility from waste producers. That's not the case. The key phrase here is all reasonable steps, in that you will have more influence in the parts of the chain that you are directly involved in, so when you're actually handling and passing over the waste. And this will reduce in other parts of the chain that you're less involved in. However, it is important that you protect yourself by taking all steps that are reasonable for you at each point. To comply with duty of care, you must take all reasonable steps to comply with 5 key requirements. Number 1 is to prevent unauthorised or harmful deposit, treatment or disposal of waste. So what we mean by this is it's illegal to deposit controlled waste except under and in accordance with an environmental permit or registered exemption. It's also illegal to keep, treat or dispose of controlled waste in a way that is likely to cause pollution of the environment or harm human health. Therefore, the key thing for you to do is, if you suspect that someone is flighting, illegally depositing, illegally burning, treating or disposing of waste, do not give your waste to them or take waste from them. If you suspect that you have unknowingly accepted misclassified waste that doesn't fit the description on the accompanying paperwork, isolate the waste and report all the details to the Environment Agency. We'll cover how to do this later on. Number 2 is to prevent a breach, failure by any other person to meet the requirements to have an environmental permit or a breach of a permit condition. Normally, a facility accepting waste requires either an environmental permit or exemption, as we mentioned previously, covering the waste activities they are completing. And in these permits, there will be set conditions and limits to prevent harm to the environment and human health. Examples of activity that would breach a permit condition or exemption limit include the transfer of waste to a facility that does not have an appropriate permit or exemption to manage or accept that waste, in a condition which means that it cannot be managed or stored safely pending removal, or in a quantity that causes a facility to exceed the limits allowed by its permit or exemption. The key bit here for you is similar to point 1. If you suspect that someone does not have an appropriate environmental permit or registered exemption, or that they are breaching the condition of their permit or exemption, do not give them your waste or take waste from them, and you should report them as mentioned previously. Number 3 is prevent the escape of waste from your control. The key thing here is you must make sure it is handled and stored safely and securely. The right container is really important for this. Use containers that are clearly and correctly labelled, suitable for the storage, transport and subsequent management activities by you and the following waste holder. Designed to prevent leakage, contamination or spoiling of the waste. And spoiled waste is waste that it can't be managed the way it was intended. Also ensure you store different types of waste separately so that they do not contaminate each other. They can be reused more easily. I'm definitely advised to use waterproof covers if rain could cause contaminated runoff or prevent the waste from being reused. Now, the key example that I've come across here is waste electricals, where the intention is for them to be, they might have a fault and they might need to be fixed and reused. However, if they've been stored outside, got wet in rain, etc., that can then completely prevent that from happening. And finally, keep waste secure. You can limit access to the waste to any of those who are authorised to handle it, and also ensure that members of the public can't access it. And it's also important to ensure vehicles are covered and that waste is secured appropriately for transport purposes, i.e. not flowing out of the vehicle halfway around the M25. Number 4 is ensure that any person you transfer the waste to has the correct authorisation. It is important that you ask the person or business you transfer your waste to, or who arranges the transfer, for evidence of their authorisation, such as a copy of their permit or their exemption registration. You should also use the register to get any evidence provided. We'll cover this in a minute. The person receiving the waste must also check that the previous holder has complied with their duty of care. If you suspect that the previous waste holder has breached their duty of care, for example, by misdescribing the waste or storing it, you should not accept the waste and report your suspicions. And record any checks that you have made, as you can use this as evidence that you have met your duty of care. So we've talked a lot about waste activities requiring the appropriate authorisation. But what are the different types and which could be applicable to the waste activities your businesses are undertaking, and what kind of authorisations can you expect when you check that your waste is being taken for an authorised location. The good news is for most businesses producing waste, you won't need to register or obtain an authorisation for the waste activities that you will be undertaking. However, you will need to ensure that you are complying with the relevant conditions on storage and ancillary treatment. And it's also good to know what other options are out there if you are considering doing further waste activities yourself. There are other types of authorisations, however, we're going to focus on the main ones that you are likely to come across. First, we're going to start with non-waste framework directives, so that's NWFD for short. These exemptions allow for some low-risk waste storage activities. They cover the basic waste storage activities most businesses will be required to undertake prior to collection and onward transport of their waste. For example, a solicitor produces paper waste and stores it in a bin on site ready to be collected and taken to an authorised waste site. Non-waste framework directives have set terms and conditions. They do not have to be registered for, they just have to be complied with. And to be honest, 99% of people will be complying without even realising that they are complying. They're those things that are in place for normal things when you produce waste before you get it taken away. The full list of conditions is available on the gov.uk website and is shown on screen. Sites operating under these exemptions can also carry out treatment ancillary to collection, which means carrying out some treatment activity to the waste prior to its collection for recovery or disposal, purely to help with the transportation or collection. And you can do this without needing to register a further waste exemption. So the examples of activities that this covers is kind of the compaction of paper and cardboard, to increase the amount of waste you can fit in a container, and separation of recyclables from mixed waste into separate storage containers to facilitate recycling. There are some more examples that are included within. The treatment activities that may take place, the key thing is that they cannot change the makeup composition of the waste, i.e. the chemical or biological nature. If operators cannot meet the terms and conditions, they must ensure they have like an alternative licence, such as waste exemptions. These are the next step up from non-waste framework directives. They are still considered of lower risk, more so than non-waste framework directives, and are mostly for use at sites that are not the place of production of the waste. Exemptions are divided into 4 types of activity: storage of waste, use of waste, treatment of waste, and then disposal of waste. Exemptions are free of charge, except for the P11 exemption, which revolves around electricals, and they last for 3 years. They have set terms and conditions, however, must be registered with the Environment Agency via the gov.uk website before they can be used. If this is not completed, then waste activities being undertaken would be considered illegal. In addition to complying with the specific conditions in each exemption, businesses must also comply with the relevant objectives, which is to ensure that waste is recovered or disposed of without endangering human health and without using processes or methods that could harm the environment. For example, without causing pollution to air, land, water, etc. The exemptions for using, treating and disposing of waste all include the storage capacity for that waste. Therefore, you can't increase the storage capacity of, say, a tea exemption by registering an additional storage exemption at the same place. If you do, the storage exemption will be invalid. There are also a number of key definitions it's worth being aware of, which are shown on screen, and these can have significant implications, particularly in regards to infrastructure requirements, to be able to comply with the exemption conditions. Not all exemptions refer to these, however, some do. So, for example, sealed drainage. Sealed drainage is essentially a drainage system that will catch all runoff on it and then either discharge it via foul sewer with an appropriate discharge consent, or collect it in a sealed sump ready for onwards tankering to an appropriate authorised site to receive it. Now, this could be, if you don't have this on your site, that could be quite an infrastructure investment, which is worth being aware of. We also get multiple questions or lots of questions about kind of collection points and the definition of those for these exemptions. So for these exemptions, we define a collection point as a place used for collecting waste where the organisation collecting the waste does not receive payment for collecting the waste or collect waste as its main business activity. And then finally, secure, which refers to both a container, lagoon or other place. And it's secure if, in relation to the waste, if the waste kept in it, all reasonable precautions are taken to make sure the waste cannot escape and members of the public cannot get access. Environmental permits are the next step up, and these cover waste activities which pose more risk to the environment. So they're more likely to be larger scale storage, treatment, disposal, etc. There are two different types of permits. Standard rules permits are the permits available for a variety of low to medium risk waste activities. Each standard permit has a set of standard rules. The standard rules state the terms and conditions that operators must meet in order to be awarded a permit and include various returns and reporting requirements. All permits have to be applied for via an application process. If the application does not demonstrate adequate compliance with the rules and conditions, it will be rejected. The full list of standard rules permits available can be seen on the gov.uk website. If the activity you intend to complete does not fit the conditions of the standard rule set, you will need to apply for a bespoke permit. Now, a bespoke permit is an environmental permit that is created for a specific waste activity or an installation. It could be very similar to a standard rule set with an additional bit in that wasn't covered, or it could be completely different. We will write set rules and conditions that site operators must comply with in order to be awarded a permit. These rules have to make sure that the operation does not pose an unacceptable risk to the environment and human health. If the operator cannot adhere to these rules, we will reject the application. All permits have annual fees associated with them and will be actively regulated to ensure compliance with the conditions. It's most likely that your waste will end up at one of these sites. It's also worth mentioning low-risk position statements. So these are temporary enforcement positions that allow an operator to carry out one of a number of listed low-risk waste operations without having environmental exemption, provided they adhere to the position's rules and do not cause harm to the environment or human health. There's no requirement for an operator to register or inform the Environment Agency that you are operating under a low-risk waste position. However, it's definitely worth checking regularly because they are constantly modified or removed. The full list and conditions are available on gov.uk if you search environmental permits for low-risk waste positions. Regulatory position statements are similar, and these are circumstances where the Environment Agency is not currently enforcing the need for an environmental permit in specific cases for some activities. In particular, RPSs reduce environmental regulation, so they allow us to focus on higher risk activities while ensuring we act in a consistent manner. They set out how we will regulate a particular activity for a set period. For example, until regulations are brought in or changed, or where a legislative review is completed. The full list and conditions are available on the gov.uk website if you search environmental permits, regulatory position statements. So just worth being aware of, as when completing duty of care checks, you may come across one of these. Another type of licence is the waste carrier's licence. Now, customers who carry, broker or deal in waste as part of a business activity, which includes raising money as a charity or non-profit organisation, need to register for a licence with the Environment Agency. And this covers the transport of waste, essentially, how your waste gets from to. The registration system consists of two tiers. Firstly, there is the lower tier, which is for lower risk carriers. This covers producers carrying their own waste on a normal or regular basis, charities and carriers of certain types of waste. Lower tier registration is indefinite unless revoked or withdrawn and is free. Normally and regularly is best defined by example. So for example, if Mrs. Jones has a florist shop, she normally and regularly produces waste. However, if her waste is taken away by a waste contractor, she does not carry that waste, she doesn't need to register. If her waste contractor lets her down and she is obliged to take her own waste on that occasion, then she is not undertaking the waste carrying activity normally and regularly. Therefore, she still doesn't need to register at this point. If, however, she decides that taking her own waste is cheaper and continues to carry her own waste, she's carrying it normally and regularly, so would need to register as a lower tier carrier. There's also the upper tier, which is for higher risk businesses. So this covers people carrying others' waste or the producers of construction and demolition waste who are carrying their own waste, which is construction and demolition. Now, construction waste is a really open term, and there is a detailed definition as to what this does and doesn't cover, which is way too detailed to go into here. However, the main principles are if construction and demolition wastes would, for example, include things like baths, sinks, fences, windows, walls, doors, plasterboard, pipework, radiators. Essentially, it's any item that had been part of or had been infrastructure. They would not include, for example, freestanding cookers, washing machines, and any items that had not been part of or had been in infrastructure. If you've got questions on that, you can talk to me or another representative of the Environment Agency will be able to identify whether the waste you're carrying does or doesn't fit that definition. Upper-tier registration lasts for 3 years and costs £154. It can be renewed in the 6 months before expiry for a slightly reduced fee. You can apply online at the carrier dealer, broker dealer or carrier broker dealer. The procedure and fee are the same, dependent on the tier. A carrier is somebody or a business who physically transports the waste, either produced in the course of their business or otherwise with a view to profit. A broker is a person or business who arranges the recovery or disposal on behalf of somebody else, and a dealer is a person or business who acts in the role of principal to purchase and subsequently sell waste. Brokers and dealers do not necessarily take physical possession of the waste, and that's just worth bearing in mind. Registration enables people employed by the registered person, company, etc., to benefit from that registration, but only if they are acting for them in the course of their employment. This means that contractors, subcontractors, or agents of a registered person are not covered by that person's registration, and they will need their own. Public register. I've mentioned this a couple of times now, and this is a way for you to check that the companies that are taking your waste have the appropriate licenses to accept it and to validate any information provided to you about authorisation. You can find the public register by going to the gov.uk website and searching for public register. And the homepage is as shown on screen. You can use the quick check function at the top of the page by entering the registration number or business name that you are looking for, if you know it. Alternatively, you can search under the individual register for the type of licence it is, e.g. waste operation, waste exemption, carrier broker. Under each of these registers, there is a search page for those types of licence, as shown for waste operations on screen. You don't need to complete all of the boxes to search, you can just enter information in one. Authorisations are not necessarily in the name you would expect. So, for example, if a business uses a trading name, this may be different to the registered company permit held under. It's also not unusual for permits to be held by individual directors and not necessarily the company name, which could also hinder your search. Therefore, it's often easier to use the postcode and postcode distance search, and this will show you all the permits of this type held within either 1 kilometre, 3 kilometres, 5 or 10 kilometres of the postcode entered. After you have completed your search, click on the permit number of the permit you are interested in, and this will take you through to an information page about this permit, as shown on the screen. And you can use this to check that the information corresponds with the copy of the permit you have. If you don't have a copy, fits the details you are expecting. For example, the permit and waste management licence number, site type and address. Just something to be aware of, certain authorisations have expiration dates, so you will want to check this and that the date is not expired. Alternatively, some sites will show as closed or expired, and this means these sites do not have permits for active operations, so worth checking for this too. It's advised you obtain a copy of the permit that you are sending your waste to, so that you can check that the permit can accept the waste codes you are sending to it as part of your duty of care check. The quickest way of doing this is to ask the company or person who holds the permit for a copy, explain why, and that it's all part of duty of care. You can then use the public register to ensure it all checks out. However, if this is not possible, you can get a copy from the Environment Agency via a Freedom of Information request. All you have to do is click on the Request Documents button at the bottom of the page, which is ringed in blue, which will pop up an email template to the care team. Explain what you would like, and this will be provided to you. However, it can take a bit of time, like I said, 20 days as a maximum, 20 working days. Also, just to clarify, when I say permits, licences, authorisations, etc., I'm referring to authorisations. It's just the legislation dictates different names for the different types, and so I'll clarify that. Number 5 is provide an accurate description of the waste when it is transferred to another person. When you transfer waste to another person, you must ensure that a written description of the waste is agreed and signed by you and the next holder. It must contain all the information you are reasonably in a position to provide to ensure the lawful and safe handling, transport, treatment, recovery or disposal by subscribers. What does this mean? Well, waste transfer notes are really key here, and they cover your requirement in terms of the information that you need to provide. They're also key to evidencing that you've complied with your duty of care and have provided an accurate description of waste. For each load of non-hazardous waste you move off of your premises, you need one of these, a waste transfer note. And this includes a set list of information about the waste and the next part of your journey. There are a number of different ways of doing this, such as EDOC, which is a free national electronic duty of care system that creates, shares, signs and stores waste transfer notes and season tickets for you online. A paper waste transfer note, which is a form to fill in, or a season ticket. And this is a single waste transfer note that covers a series of non-hazardous waste transfers. The season ticket can last up to 1 year and can be used for regular transfers of the same type of non-hazardous waste with the same carrier. If you have several sites serviced by the same carrier, with the same type of waste collected, they can be listed in a schedule to the season ticket. You can keep a record of the collection time and quantity of waste for each movement as separate, though. You could accompany the season ticket overall in your record keeping. There is a template waste transfer note on gov.uk, which you can see on screen. I highly recommend this. It's easily downloaded, covers all the information that must be included by law on waste transfer notes. It's kind of a good template to have. However, you don't have to use a specific template, and as long as you have all of the required information provided, it can be combined with any document. So it's very common for it all to be combined onto an invoice and that kind of thing. So don't be put off if it's all kind of on one document. When completing a waste transfer note, you must ensure that a written description of the waste is agreed and signed by you and the next holder, and that you fill out sections A and B in full. So notice that I've repeated a bit about written description, and that's really, really key, because you are ultimately in the best place to be able to describe what waste you have and what potential components it has to it, or what potential hazards it has to it as well. A waste transfer note is not required for non-hazardous waste if the waste holder does not change on the transfer of waste. So if one business is moving it to another premises, which is also owned by them and run by them, then by law they don't technically need a waste transfer note. However, we do advise best practice, and that's that the business understands who has responsibility for that waste and a record is kept of the internal transfers. You must also ensure that you keep these records for 2 years for non-haz waste, 2 years for season tickets, 6 years if you are a landfill operator for non-haz waste, and this is for landfill tax purposes, and the lifetime of an environmental permit. So that's the bit just clarifying the time bit on the screen. Also, if an officer of the Environment Agency, Natural Resources Wales or local authority asks you for a copy of this information, by law you must provide it. When hazardous waste is moved, there are different requirements, but this is separate from non-hazardous waste. Instead of a waste transfer note, it must be accompanied by a hazardous waste consignment note. Consignment notes is needed for all movements of hazardous waste, regardless of whether it is an internal transfer by the same business, and this is because there are stricter controls on hazardous waste and the movement must always be tracked. However, there are 2 exceptions, and this is for the movement of domestic hazardous waste, other than asbestos, from a domestic household to an initial collection point. And the second is waste imported or exported under international waste shipment controls, because they've got different paperwork. Again, there's a template of a consignment note available on the gov.uk website, as you can see on screen. And this is a bit different from transfer notes in that ideally all notes used should be as near as possible to this format. Do not use a consignment note if information fields are missing, altered, declarations are already different, or the format is different. It's also important you consider whether there are any problems associated with the waste that you need to describe, so that subsequent users can handle it properly. So for example, does the waste need a special container? Is it corrosive? Would it go through certain types of material? Does it need particular treatment or handling? Could it cause a problem during treatment or disposal? Is it dusty, smelly, or otherwise offensive waste? And you need to be ensuring that your description includes this. If you are a producer of hazardous waste or hold an exemption, you must keep consignment notes for 3 years. Waste permits must hold consignment notes for 5 years, and all other records for as long as the permit is held. And landfills must hold all records for as long as you have the permit. Okay, so a key part of the waste description is the classification of waste. This is legally the producer of the waste responsibility. I'm not going to go into lots of detail about this, as it could be an entire WebEx on its own. However, I will point you in the right direction where you can find out more information and provide a brief overview. So on your waste transfer note, consignment note, your waste description must also include a waste classification code. Now these are referred to as list of waste codes, LOW, or EWC, European Waste Catalogue Code. Full list of EWC codes are available in the document shown on screen, and this is called Waste Technical Guidance WM3. This really is, I can't stress how important this document is and how much really good information there is in there, but it is quite long, so I hope to give you a bit of an overview here. The list of waste, which is section A7, is divided into 20 chapters. They're numbered 1 to 20, and these chapters refer to a specific industry process or business activity that produced the waste. So instead of looking at exactly what the waste is to begin with, you first start on the industry process or business activity that produced it. So the first step in classifying waste is to look to chapters 01 to 12, skip a few, and then look at 17 to 20. If no appropriate entry is found in these chapters, then you should check chapters 13, then 14, then 15, and finally, if it's not listed there, refer to chapter 16. Once you have decided which one of these 20 chapters is the most appropriate industry process to produce your waste, onto this chapter. Each of these 20 chapters are then divided into subchapters. Choose the relevant subchapter, which will give you another 2-digit number, creating a 4-digit number with the chapter number. Within each subchapter are the classification codes for individual waste. So this creates a 6-digit EWC code overall. Additionally, in the list of waste, there are 4 types of entry. We've got red and labelled AH. These are known as absolute hazardous waste. So these wastes are always hazardous. We have black and labelled absolute non-hazardous. These wastes are always non-hazardous. There are some situations here where you look at it and you think, hang on, can that be right? For example, municipal mixed waste is an absolute non-hazardous code, whereas in reality, municipal mixed waste wastes are hazardous. Whether there's kind of law behind that, because likely this waste is being produced by householders, and it would make it very, very complicated if householders were trying to classify all of their mixed municipal waste. There's also blue and labelled MH waste, and these are known as mirror hazardous entries. So these go alongside the entries that are green and labelled MN, and these are mirror non-hazardous entries. The 6-digit codes in the list of waste are hazardous waste have an asterisk next to them. Now, in terms of mirror entries, this means for a single waste there will be 2 potential codes that apply, one that is hazardous and one that's not. So it could be hazardous, it could not be, depending on the composition of it. It's up to you to determine which of these codes is correct, either through sampling and testing, knowledge of the production process, or the history of the waste. Web 3 will guide you through this, however it can be complicated. If you have any questions, please contact the Environment Agency. The important thing to remember is that the legal responsibility is on the producer to complete this classification. It's commonplace for waste carriers and waste licence holders to assist with this, as they are the waste expert, and this is okay, but you do need to ensure that you have oversight of this as well, and you're not just leaving it up to them. And finally, record keeping. The records are the best way to show that you have met your duty of care. Make a note of carriers' licences, public register searches, keep copies of permits that waste is being sent to, and the waste transfer notes used to transport the waste, etc. The code is admissible as evidence in legal proceedings, which means it can be used in a case. This is guidance on how to comply with duty of care. Failure to comply with duty of care is an offence with no upper limit on the court's power to fine. Therefore, it's worth keeping records. I've mentioned multiple times that if you suspect something is not right, report it to the Environment Agency. And you can do this via our incident hotline number, which is 0800 80 70 60. This is a 24/7 free phone service. Alternatively, you can report waste crime anonymously to Crime Stoppers, also via their 24/7 free phone service, or they also have an online report form. The information in these reports is passed through to the relevant team for investigation and follow-up. We really appreciate all the reports we receive, and we'll try to make it as quick, efficient process as possible for you, and make it as easy as possible to do. The last thing I'm going to mention is just in regards to the current situation. We recognise the difficulties being faced as a result of coronavirus, and whilst we still expect people to take all reasonable steps to comply with regulatory requirements, it is not possible due to these exceptional circumstances. We have set out our regulatory response, which includes expectations of how to manage this to minimise the potential impact on human health and the environment. A really important factor here is to keep records. showing why a non-compliance occurred and what actions were taken as a result in line with the expectations listed. For more information, please see the gov.uk webpage titled Environment Agency Regulatory Response to Coronavirus, which is also continuously being updated as more information becomes available as well. We've also published some time-limited regulatory position statements, and each RPS sets out when it applies and the conditions you must comply with. All the RPSs issued are available on gov.uk, and they cover things such as exceeding waste storage limits at permitted sites and social distancing when using waste transfer and consignment notes. While most won't be relevant for you, some will, and it's worth being aware of them. Well, that's me finished. Thank you very much for listening and dialing in. I'm now going to hand back to Ben for any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Abi, for that. That's really interesting, really important information out there. And we do have a number of questions from several people here. So I'm going to crack straight on with those. I'm aware of time. I'll start with this first one that we've received. This person just mentioned that they believe that new guidelines have been published in light of COVID-19 in relation to the WTNs and specifically social distancing, electronic signing, that sort of thing. Are you able to add anything to that and update attendees around the new guidelines?
Yes, so absolutely, that is a really big thing, especially in terms of social distancing, because it makes using waste transfer notes and consignment notes really difficult because of the whole signing and sharing paperwork and pens, etc. There has been an RPS issued for that, which is on the list on the last slide that I showed. So you can search for that on the gov.uk website. The best way is to, instead of me kind of going through it, is just to research that and have a look, and that will guide you through the whole process of how to manage that risk in this current situation. So it covers extra steps or different steps you can take to prevent having to break social distancing rules.
Excellent. Fantastic. Okay. Someone mentioned here, is there any guidance on disposal of radioactive ionisation smoke detectors if the original manufacturer has been shut down?
I believe there is, yes. I'll tell you what, that would be something I'll have to take offline and I can respond to in writing, if that's okay, because I can send through kind of guidance documents and that kind of thing, and maybe get a little bit more information on the type of waste and what brands as well are trying to be disposed of.
Yeah, okay, great, fantastic, we can do that. I'll leave that question then, and I can forward that one on to you following the webinar for us to look into.
Thank you.
Someone else has put here, do dumb, in quotation marks, connecting cables, so for example, for PCs or electric kettle cable, fall into the WEEE waste category? If not, what do you know what their waste is, what is their waste stream?
That's a really good question. I honestly don't know. My gut feeling would be yes, but that's another one I can research and provide a written response.
Okay, brilliant. What are your thoughts on the on paper / environmentally friendly sharps bins?
Ooh,
I suppose that's maybe more of a personal thing rather than a corporate sort of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I'm definitely for, as much as we can kind of make bins and everything as possible environmentally friendly, great. Obviously, in terms of sharps bins, we've got a big potential health and safety risk there, and we've got to make sure that they're safe as well. So it is a bit of a balance, but I'm definitely kind of, as far as is practical and safe, go for it as much as possible. But obviously, the health and safety side is also just as important.
Right, okay. And also, due to the nature of their work, obviously, they have a lot of spent cartridges and cases from firearms. Do they need a special disposal method at all?
Again, that's a really good question. It would be one I'll have to look into a bit more specifically. It would probably depend on the amount of residue that remains within the cartridges. So I'd need a little bit more information on kind of the exact type of cartridges and what they contain as well. But I can also, provide a written response to that.
Okay, that's great. We'll take that one offline as well. If an organisation employs a third party to maintain office maintenance who owns the resulting waste, such as fluorescent lamps,
okay,
Oh, I tell you what, that's kind of, I think the person that asked that question, it seems like it stopped a little bit early. So if you want to just re-ask that one for me, that'd be fantastic. So I'll move on to another one here. Do you think that there is a correlation between poor waste management and poor health and safety standards?
A good question. I honestly don't know. I mean, I've definitely kind of come across poor health and safety in poor waste management as well, but I have also kind of come across poor health and safety in other locations as well where waste management was on point. I would say, I mean, if we're talking kind of, I've also kind of dealt with illegal activity as well, and in some situations, if there's kind of different levels of illegal activity. If people are, there's kind of an unintentional, accidental activity, but there's also the situation where the rules and regulations are maybe being pointedly ignored. So in those situations, I'd say it's probably common for similar health and safety laws to be ignored as well. But yeah, they can go hand in hand, but they can also not as well.
Okay, great. Going back to the question that I just mentioned earlier, sorry, that was my fault. I kind of just read it wrong. The question was actually asking if an organisation employs a third party to maintain office maintenance, who actually owns the resulting waste, such as fluorescent lamps, for example?
So my understanding of that is you've got a third party coming in and kind of reducing your producing the fluorescent lamps. And that kind of thing, and other waste. That is a slightly difficult one. If you've got a third-party contractor that comes in and is just picking up your waste, then it's still yours. If somebody's coming in and doing maintenance to a building or light fixtures and things, is then producing the waste, then we would deem that it's their waste, and they need to ensure that they're involved as well. However, there is a slight crossover because it is coming from your property as well, and there's maintenance and kind of just general, I guess, waste management also crosses over. So maintenance in terms of comes to site and takes off all the light fittings and fixtures in the building, or comes to site regularly and picks up a fluorescent tube, are different. So I tell you what, I'm kind of going around in circles. I will reply to that one in writing, but my understanding is if it's like a scheduled contract, they come and they remove the fluorescent tubes for you, then it's still your waste, but they will cover the whole process of kind of transferring it in most cases, because that's kind of the service that's provided. But if they're coming onto site and they're dismantling and taking off, light fittings on a one-off occasion, then that would be their waste that they're producing as part of that maintenance activity.
Right, okay, fair enough then. Okay, we've got a couple more that have come in. We've still got a bit of time. So someone just asked, where are the hazard codes found?
So they are all in WM3. So they're all listed for you, including what they cover and the different titles and the HP codes as well. So it's that technical guidance document that I showed with the blue front page. You can just do a control F search in there and you'll be able to find them.
Excellent. Okay, an interesting one here. What would you say are the most common failings that you see from businesses?
I would say it's kind of not realising the full extent of duty of care responsibilities, and kind of handing off waste or kind of getting a contractor in and just saying, okay, you deal with it, and then not keeping any records, not having any involvement, and not really taking any ownership. That's what I would say, and it does unfortunately happen quite a bit. So my advice would be just really kind of make sure that you're in the loop and you're aware of what's going on, because it's absolutely fine to use contractors, and contractors for the most part are very experienced. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're very on the ball, and they'll be able to assist you with getting the most out of your waste. It's just to make sure that you're clued in and you know what's going on as well, that you're appropriately covered. I would also say record keeping as well. Record keeping is really key and really important. So make sure that you're well organised, and that you keep your records for the right amount of time as well.
Okay, fantastic. we've got one here. Does the Environment Agency have a rating system for waste contractors so businesses know if they're employing a reputable contractor as well?
We don't, I'm afraid. It's a really good question, and it has been something that's been raised previously and asked for. The difficulty is because we're regulators as well, we can't be seen to kind of be favouring any business, and therefore we can't make recommendations, that kind of thing. I mean, it might be something that will change in the future, in that almost like a rating system based on permit compliance, etc., etc. But right now, we are a bit limited in that all we can really say is just do your duty of care checks, make sure that they've got the relevant waste licenses, and if you're having any trouble with that at all, or if you're not sure, then please do contact us, because that's something we can easily help with. But we can't kind of recommend specific companies, businesses, or people, because it could be unfair kind of across the board if we're only recommending certain people and not others. And as a regulator, we have to maintain or be impartial as well.
Okay, and would those be the contact details you showed on the previous slide, or are you happy for your own email address to be provided to delegates today?
Yeah, my email address can be provided. Alternatively, we have a national customer contact centre, which I should have included in the presentation actually. But if you just Google National Customer Contact Centre for the Environment Agency, then there's a phone number that can take you through to our kind of, we have a switchboard, so they'll be able to figure out what your question is and then divert you to the best team to be able to answer. Because I only really cover certain parts of Essex, so for certain queries, depending on where you are, I'll have to kind of put you through to the best person. So to be honest, Central are probably going to be the best people to get you to the right people, the best answer.
Excellent. Okay, great. That's fantastic. Another correlation related question here. So do you think that there is a correlation between more stringent and expensive waste regulations and illegal disposal?
Potentially. I mean, it's a balance, because if waste regulations are more stringent, then they're likely that, or they will be that for a reason, because obviously all of our legislation is debated extensively before it comes into practice, and it's only brought in if we feel that it's necessary. Obviously, as prices rise for disposal and other kind of waste management options, it does sometimes have the knock-on effect that it leads to more illegal activity in terms of fly tipping or illegal waste sites, etc. But I really do believe that all of the legislation we have is there for good reason. And there's kind of constant processes where we're feeding back to say that this is what we'd like to see in the next kind of updates to legislation, things we think would be really useful, things that we would scrap as well. I mean, there was quite a lot of work done a couple of years ago to kind of try and remove as much red tape as possible and make it easier for companies. And one of those things was, I talked about carrier licenses earlier, but on a similar vein, you used to be able to have to register if you produce hazardous waste. But that was kind of raised as being something that was really a bit excessive, in that huge amounts of people having to do this. It was only a small amount of money each year, and it was just kind of deemed something that wasn't necessary. So as a result, we scrapped that to try and make it easier across the country. So it can do, but we're doing our best to make sure that the legislation that we have works for us and is kind of the best it can be.
Excellent. Okay. We have kind of come to the time. There's just one more quick question I'd just like to ask, and then we've actually got through all of the questions. This person just asked, do you recommend carrying out duty of care visits at your waste contractor's premises?
I absolutely do. Yes. Yeah. If you have the resources and means to, I would definitely recommend it, because I really think a site visit gives you a feel for the situation as well. And we talked about kind of, potentially exceeding permit limits and that kind of thing as being part of duty of care earlier. And the best way for you to assess that and get a bit of an idea is going to site. So I would fully recommend those.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Okay. Well, we have come to the end of our time. Thank you very much, Abi, for taking the time out today to provide us with that presentation. It's really helpful. We've got some great comments from people. Thank you very much for a remarkable session, in fact. Thank you to Adam and the committee of the Essex branch for pulling this all together. And of course, thank you to all of you who have signed in today to listen to the session. We do hope you found it useful, and we hope that you'll join us for more of them.